The following podcast is not relating to my teachings and work at Del Cedar Medical Center and is for entertainment purposes only. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Life of Flow podcast,
aka LOF.
LOF.
The thing, hashtag LOF.
And this is DVA Rant number
5.
And
Cinque.
today, this is Cinque. Today, we're going to kind of flip things on its head and have a conversation about not what we think or what we're considering from a scientific procedural standpoint, but we're going to talk to a patient, to actually the first patient I did a DVA after coming out of fellowship. And back in 2019, and it
was awesome.
Eloy Salazar, very gracious, great human, and he was generous enough to give us his time, his perspective, and all great insight.
It was great, man. I always love, flipping the coin and seeing things on the other side. And I think there's a lot of people that are going to get a lot from this conversation. So it was very heartfelt. We also realized that not a lot of people like Lucas at all.
Yeah, I need some coaching on that.
But anyway, Eloy, thank you very, very much. Let's listen. Let's do it.
Vamos.
Hi.
Two vascular surgeons walk into a bar and come out with a podcast. We are talking everything vascular and not. Welcome to the Life of Flow podcast.
Rant number 5. And today, I have the pleasure and the honor of introducing Eloy Salazar. And Eloy was...
Hello. Glad to be here.
Yeah. Eloy was the first patient I did a DVA on after leaving training back when I was working in San Antonio. And Eloy and I went through a long journey together to be able to save his limb and try to keep, his level of function and normalcy in his life as much as we could. So Eloy has been gracious enough to give us some of his time here on a Saturday and be, open about his experience. So I'm Eloy, very thankful for you to join us.
Thank you.
Do you want to start off, Miguel?
Yeah. Eloy, also thank you. I always admire people that are willing to share their stories. It's not everybody that has the courage to do that. And we admire and applaud you for that. And the reason why is because I think these are stories that need to be told, because they act as an inspiration to those that are, in the midst of things that are still, far from the light at the end of the tunnel. There are stories of inspiration for us as physicians that are skeptical about a procedure. And I hope that in some shape or form also inspirational for other less altruistic segments of our business, like the insurance companies, for example, and the hospitals that maintain a degree of control over what we can or can't do. And so I commend you for coming, and I thank you also for deciding to do it in this particular forum. I don't want to necessarily bring you into kind of the negative part of things, but I think that any story needs to start from the inception of the problem. And I would love to hear in your own words what was going on at that time, right? I'm sure this was one of those things that comes from left field. Nobody goes through life thinking they're going to have peripheral arterial disease, and certainly nobody goes through life thinking that if they do have it, they're going to have the worst type of it that has very limited options, and that the option of a mutilation is on the table, a loss of an extremity. So if you don't mind, can you tell me what you were doing before this whole thing started, and and then how did the dark days kind of came about?
Sure. I was working full time. My degree was in athletic training, so I was very, very active. On the sideline, doing patient care with my athletes, returning them to play, to function as normal as after surgery, after injuries, and all of a sudden, I ended up with a gangrenous toe. So I went to a clinic downtown San Antonio, and they were not very positive in talking to me. Even after the procedure, basically what they told me is that they were going to amputate below the knee. No hope for anything. Just we're going to cut it off. And while I was waiting in the waiting room for this consult, I want to say 90% of the patients there were amputees. They were missing one or both legs. So that within itself was an eye opener. So that's when I decided to go for a second opinion. And we had used Dr. Seidman for my dad, so that's where I ended up going to.
Now, this is. Did you get a vascular evaluation at this facility? Did they do an ultrasound, or did you get an angiography? How much was done?
They ended up going into the limb, and they basically just evaluated that and took pictures, and they said, "There's nothing we can do."
Understood.
So they just pulled out and said, "That's it. There's nothing we can do. You need to get an amputation." So that did not sit well with me. So I decided to go for that second opinion. And I kind of laugh at it now because when I went to Dr. Simon, I go, "I'm sorry, Dr. Simon, but I'm here for a second opinion." And he just kind of chuckled and he said, "Well, I'm the one for the second opinion. I'm good for it." So that's how this all started. And long story short here, I ended up, my two toes started getting gangrenous, and that's where I met Dr. Ferrer. And Dr. Seidman, he was working with Dr. Seidman, and that's how this whole thing started on what he could do for me, the outcomes, and what could happen.
That right there for
that
me
kind of tells you.
For me, very, very common story.
That right there has two really important teaching points, which is one, the importance of you being your own advocate.
Yeah.
As a patient, right? If it doesn't settle, it doesn't necessarily mean that you're right, by the way, but maybe there's a chance that there may be something else. And I think that that's a highly important teaching point. The other one, and on the flip side, is how important it is for you, Lucas, or for me, to make sure that the people around us, that the physicians around us, know what we're capable of doing.
Yeah.
Because if this other intermediate physician did not know you, did not know your capacities or capabilities, then the story would have ended there. Eloy's story would have ended on him trying his best to get to the right spot. And it potentially would have just returned to the below the knee amputation.
Yeah.
So two important things, right? Advocate for yourself, but also for us, make sure that we have as much information out there on how to reach us. I think that's a super important thing. Is also, I think in the advocating for yourself as a physician, as a patient, is search online. Because these, options to an amputation, second opinion to an amputation, whatever those is, I bet you that there are people that are going to pop up, and we need to make sure that we pop up when these search words are done, so that people like you get in touch with us.
So Eloy, I've had the conversation of explaining this condition and procedure to a lot of patients, and it's difficult to see what the impact is of the initial conversation is on your side. I think I'm doing a good job of explaining it, but I really have no idea. Can you recall what you thought when we had the conversation about, listen, this is a difficult case, it would require this other procedure. Can you talk about that?
Sure. Getting back to what Dr. Montero just said, I honestly feel that it's not getting out there what the possibilities of saving someone's limb. And I think that's why I'm doing this. I'm hoping that together with you, we can get out something to where we can teach, and your patients can kind of get an idea of what is out there. I think a lot of patients don't know what's out there, and even healthcare providers
Correct.
have no idea when I tell them exactly what was done to it.
Correct.
They just kind of look at me and just kind of like, do you actually know what you're talking about, what was done? Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, I completely believe that happens to you often.
How is your network of support, Eloy, if you don't mind sharing? Family, friends.
Sorry?
I'm asking about one of the things that I've realized that are very important when you're trying to go through these complex moments in healthcare. It's important to have some Matt Hypers, some pretty good people behind you, pushing you, supporting you emotionally. It's a roller coaster. Sometimes you get good news, sometimes you don't get great news. There may be some painful days in the interim. How was your support? Like, did you have family or friends, or was this a very lonely time for you?
I've got my sister, and I have to thank her a whole lot. She saw me through this whole thing. She helped with my care. She, was right there taking me and bringing me to different appointments, from hyperbarics to wound care, and helping me immensely. And I'm very thankful for her. Friends, I left all my friends at work, and that's about 100 miles away. Mm-hmm. So friends would call me, but I didn't get to see a lot of my friends during this whole time.
Okay.
But they did keep in touch, which was very good.
So how was a little bit of this whole process? Do you remember how the procedure went and how you felt after the procedure, and maybe the first few weeks or days after the procedure? I'm sorry, Lucas, what did you do? Did you do a DVA or a HISA, or what was it?
Yeah, so I'm just going to give a little background so that the physicians that are listening to Eloy kind of get a sense. So what happened was that, if I remember correctly, and you can correct me, Eloy, is that Dr. Seidman did an angiogram, tried to open a tibial, but obviously, as we know, this disease, there's really not much you can do. And then Eloy developed pretty severe gangrene of the fourth and fifth. Mm-hmm. And after that angiogram, I think he got an amputation, and the amputation obviously broke down. And then that's where he comes to me. He has severe gangrene in the amputation side of the fourth and fifth, extending into part of the midfoot and the lateral aspect. So then we have the conversation, and what I did was a HISA, and this So I did vein mapping when I go into the procedure. The vein mapping was hadn't picked up that there was like multiple points of branching where the vein became smaller. So I thought that this was a vein that wasn't appropriate to perform. So at that point, I improvised, and I got a artegraft, which was the only thing available at the hospital where I did this, and then I did an anastomosis from the pop to basically
medial
marginal.
Okay.
So we did a HICE, and then I did an open. At those days, we were still doing open valvulectomy with coronary dilators, as we had done in Houston.
Yeah. Still.
So
I'm sorry.
yeah.
I still do that.
Well, I haven't done it that way in a while. But
we'll have to talk later about that.
Yeah.
But
so then that's what we did,
okay,
and then
so
I did a debridement with a dermal matrix.
So you did a superficial venous arterialization with a bovine, denaturalized bovine carotid graft.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, Elo. Now we understand kind of what the technicalities were. That was as much shop as we want to talk today. So, what were the first few days, if you can recall, after this procedure? I mean, that was a big procedure with big cuts. How'd that feel?
We had this procedure done, not at university, but at I think a Methodist hospital.
No, another one.
St. Luke's.
Yeah.
And so getting out of surgery, I was combative. I remember that. But I understood it was going to be a very intense procedure. And the pain-wise, it was intense. But not so much when they tried to stand me up. That was massive pain. And Dr. Ferrer had told me, what to expect. So it was there. And I was sort of ready for it, but I didn't know how intense that was going to be. I had a vacuum type of mechanism on it. And so, being the athletic trainer, I tried to do my ankle movements, try to keep the swelling down. So that's, right after the procedure, I had very good care. The nursing staff was awesome. Physical therapy was awesome. And it was painful. I won't lie to you. It got better every day, and to where I could finally, go to physical therapy and do some exercises. I mean, I wasn't full go like I was before, but I did end up losing all my toes, like I was told, because of the procedure. So the orthopedic podiatrist that actually did it, he basically ended up just losing my toes. Everything else was, there was blood flow, and the graft was still working at that time. But pain-wise, it was pretty painful. Of course, I was, they were giving me pain medication, and it helped. So I don't know. Did I answer your question there?
Can you pinpoint a moment? Because at this point, it's just blind faith, right? I mean, you meet this doctor. He's a total stranger one day. And he's offering you this solution to get through one of these really dark moments in your life. Tells you, preps you, explains to you very well, very thoughtfully. We're saving the leg. The toes could be collateral damage. You are going to wake up with some pain. It's going to be there's going to be some rough days ahead of this. But could you pinpoint maybe a moment after that storm that you said, this shit's working and this was worth it? Was there a little moment there at some point that you can pinpoint and say, I don't know, I remember getting out of the car, going for groceries, or maybe an appointment with a podiatrist, who the hell knows? Maybe a moment where you said, you got some good news, you felt differently, things started perking up, and there was a ray of light that just kind of peeked through that big dark cloud that had been glooming over your life for the last few months.
Let me just tell you, first of all, when I met Dr. Ferrer, I did not like him.
That makes two of us, Eloy. That makes two of us. What an interesting conversation. I'm glad that you said that. You and everybody else, by the way.
He was blunt, and I felt he was a little arrogant. You know, I guess what I was waiting for was a pat on the back of the head, say everything's going to be okay. No, he did not paint that picture. So going into this, he said it was it was just something new. So going into this, I'm for education. I'm a teacher. So let's do it. And that's when I decided to go ahead and do it. Now, when I came out of it, and my toes started getting gangrenous, and Dr. Ferrer told me what the next step was going to be, was to amputate the toes or up to midfoot. So I was getting ready for that. Dr. Ferrer would come in and check the graph, and I knew it was working because he would smile when he would check for blood flow to the graft. So I knew it was there. It was just my body that needed to switch over. So that was the first sign that it worked to a point there. But again, Dr. Ferrer was very blunt. Hey, this could quit at any time. So I still didn't like him much for him saying stuff like that, but he was pretty honest.
So that ray of light,
I guess I would.
It's an interesting thing you bring up, Eloy, because we as vascular surgeons, or I'd say as vascular interventionalists, because there's maybe other specialties that also do what we do in a way, shape, or form. And I, at least personally, I always walk around with these Doppler machines in our pockets, either us or somebody in the team or on the floor. And I do realize what a drum roll moment it is, because the entire room, the family member, the patient, everybody goes quiet, and you put a little bit of gel, and my God, I'm telling you, inside, I'm praying. I'm at that moment, I'm like, please, sweet baby Jesus, let this thing just blow beautifully. Give me that flow I'm waiting for, because I was in that OR for 6 hours, right? I was really... And when you put in there, and to your point, Eloy, that little smile of content from the physician himself, I'm sure was like beautiful, right? He's like, okay, whew, if he's happy, I'm happy, right? Yeah. And I always try to make a little joke where I'll go and I'm like, oh, yep, there's the heart rate. It's gonna be a baby boy, and then they always kind of laugh. But there's this moment of like, whew, okay, we've got blood flow. Now we got to let the dust settle, right? That's such a, and it's such an important thing for everybody out there listening. It's really make this a point when you're talking to your patients and examining them about how important it is that we have that moment. Those little victories, those little rays of sun are important, right? I mean, the storm isn't over; it's just starting to peak. But it's those important wins that when you've been through it a long time, I think they give you the extra energy you need to continue the race.
Yeah.
Right? These are marathons.
Yeah. So the process of getting like the multiple foot procedures, I remember, was a little taxing on you, just because there was a lot of back and forth. And the podiatrist was Dr. Thomas Zagones out of San Antonio, who's a magician, an amazing podiatrist.
Shout out to Thomas.
Yeah, shout out to Thomas.
We've brought you up a couple of times in the pod and in personal conversations.
Yeah.
We're big admirers of your work.
He's a great teacher, a great surgeon. But we both have personalities. Thomas has a strong personality. I have a strong personality. So I remember, Eloy, you were very taxed going back and forth, and there was some confusion around it. And I think Thomas and I were developing a relationship at that point because I had just gone to San Antonio, and I was looking for a partner in this to help me with the foot reconstruction. So can you talk to that about the frustration as a patient when you have physicians that are not communicating in an effective way? Because I know that's a point that we could have done better.
Yes. Dr. Zagones, his personality, it's a strong one. I remember, and very good physician, and he explained everything. And one of the good things, with the university system, I missed that when I went to Austin for surgery. I'm used to having the physician come in and talk to me before the procedure, and he did, and he explained everything. The thing between the two different personalities is one went to one school and Dr. Ferrer went to another. So, and I can understand that. So some of the things that, I was in the hyperbarics, Dr. Zagones was not. Dr. Ferrer was into hyperbarics. So that was a clash right there into, down the road what was going to happen. One of the procedures that was done when they amputated my toes, they did local anesthesia. Man, that was horrible. That hurt, and I was complaining, and I was voicing, and nobody heard me, or nobody listened. Let me put it that way. That was the only bad thing about that procedure. So, the personalities, like I said, I know Dr. Ferrer kind of upset Dr. Zagones a couple of times, but hey, that's what made it a little interesting. I kind of warned him, don't piss him off, Doc. Please do not piss Dr. Zagones off. He still did it anyway. So,
tell him nobody likes Lucas, Eloy.
Great. And I'm supposed to see him like next week, and every time I see him, he's very, very proud of what I've accomplished, and what it looks like. Every time he'll give me 2 or 3 wows on how the saving of the limb looks. So I'm very pleased with all that.
Well, one of the things that we've learned through this particular procedure, Eloy, and we're still learning. That's part of why we're doing these shows, is because we feel there's so many people that will benefit from listening to them. Is how, to your word, taxing the perioperative, not only after, but before, intra, and after. So before, during, and after surgery. It's incredibly taxing on the patient, but it requires a very complex array of coordination that our current healthcare systems just don't have embedded, and appropriately so. And I think that's going to continue being a labor of love for anybody that wants to get involved in this. And probably not only in this procedure, but limb preservation overall, right? It requires you to coordinate with the infectious disease doctors, with the podiatrists, with the foot and ankle reconstruction surgeons, with the vascular surgeons, with the endocrinologists, with the diabetologists, with the kidney doctor. Like, there's just all these other things that need to happen. And I hear you loud and clear how much this can be, because if you're your advocate and you're just trying to get the right, imagine getting a second opinion at one point in time, but then having to then add 5 or 6 different subspecialties. And what if the answers you get from each one of those are not necessarily the ones you expect? So now we're talking about 10 different subspecialties, 15 different subspecialties with multiple second and third opinions. I mean, this sounds like a nightmare.
Yeah.
Me just trying to put myself in your position, Eloy, it sounds horrible, right? Because you would love to think that when you're sick, all you have to do is put yourself into a group of people that know exactly what they're doing. But that doesn't happen all the time. And so I hear you, and I think we have to, as practitioners, listen to this more and understand how frustration, anger are things that are human traits and mechanisms of defense that we just sometimes have to forgive. Lucas and I were having this conversation behind the scenes about a rather disgruntled patient for some other reason. But, to some extent, how much slack do you cut them when things are really going in a wrong direction? And I don't know the right answer, but I do think that talking about this at least is important for physicians that are dealing with these complex scenarios, about how important it is to be understanding and empathetic to that, right? And I know that at the end of this, you've created this beautiful relationship with them. I would say that you even probably have a degree of a friendship built with them. But not everybody could have had the capacity and the emotional bandwidth to put all those pieces together, to deal with the personalities, to deal with the time, to deal with the taxation on pain and suffering. And for that, I think also there's a commendment to be had. But if there were maybe patients out there, would there be any advice as to things that you think helped you maneuver the complexities of multiple cooks in the kitchen? Anything that you could do as an advice if you're there, if you had a friend going through this, what can they do to survive or navigate this as appropriately as possible?
One of the things while I was working, I am a diabetic, and I was massively overweight. When I started this adventure, I was at 325 pounds.
Where are you now?
Before Dr. Ferrer left. I'm sorry?
What's your weight now?
210.
That's awesome.
Wow.
That's awesome. You shaved 100 pounds.
I've lost about 100 pounds.
Whew.
Wow.
That's awesome.
Yes.
Kudos.
And that was basically because of Dr. Ferrer. Before he left, he basically sat me down and had that heart-to-heart talk about what I needed to do to change my life and get healthier, exercise. He talked me into a keto diet, and with the help of the endocrinologist, I lost my weight 2 and 3 pounds in a month and 2 months. It didn't go. I didn't get like this 100-pound loss overnight. It took work. My A1C, my last one was 5.6.
Wow.
So I watch my diet now. I exercise as much as I can. I garden and I walk. That's my exercise. I'm doing cardiac rehab because of my open heart surgery. So that one, they kicked my butt there too.
You went through
one
heart
of the things
surgery
getting back
after
to-
the arterialization or before?
Recently.
Wow.
After.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
But
it off,
years
put it off,
after.
put it off
Yeah,
as
yeah,
much
yeah.
as I could.
Yeah.
Amazing.
So can you, Eloy,
Now,
can you,
after the procedure, Dr. Ferrer would send me in for vascular studies. And I know a lot of the technicians that did the vascular studies always referred to me as the experiment. Oh, this is the experiment.
Oh my
And
God.
it kind of bothered me a little bit, but not really. The experiment was working. So, I mean, when they would do the studies and I could hear the gush, 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 the pulse. Hey, I'm good. There was something moving, something flowing.
Did any of the techs like Dr.
And
Ferrer?
so,
It seems like not a whole lot of people there like them.
no, no, they didn't.
Eloy, you made my day. Thank you.
I'll be honest with you, Doc. It's kind of like,
I know.
I
can
don't
be
know if you were
No
keeping
wonder.
acting or what, but
No wonder why he left that city very quickly.
Yeah, I have to work on my people skills, to be honest.
What were you going to ask him?
like I said, I didn't like him when I first met him. So,
yeah. Eloy, can you, two things. Was there a moment where you were about to lose hope, and how did you overcome that? And then can you talk a little bit about how you transformed your lifestyle as far as your diet, your exercise, because that's a super important thing. I kind of tell all my patients, and I don't know if I'm right, but I tell all my patients to try to limit as much carbohydrates as humanly possible, and to exercise and do as much exercise as they can, because that's what's going to keep them hopefully in remission. Mm-hmm. So can you talk a little bit about, first of all, if there a moment that you were about to lose hope and how you overcame it, and then how has your life transformed after those lifestyle changes?
well, having that heart-to-heart talk with you, and you were leaving, felt a little abandoned, and I think I was mostly scared. With you, if I had a problem, even though I never really called you for anything, not unless it was really important, I had you down the road, and so I felt secure there. But now you were leaving, so that was a little rough. So I decided to go ahead and watch my diet, and the keto, I had to do research on it, and when I would talk to the nutritionists, they were totally against it. A keto diet, and they were just they said it was just a fad, and they were negative. But it worked for me. I really got into it. I liked it. And now I wasn't doing a total keto diet because I knew it was bad for the kidneys, but also keeping my sugars at the time after the procedure. I think you told me keep it below 120, 140, waking up. And so keeping the sugars that low really helped the A1C come down. So those were, right before all that, when I started, my toes started turning black, and that was when I almost lost hope. I'll be honest with you. Just looking back, those were some pretty grim times. Even though, going in for some of the vascular studies, I could hear the blood flowing to the limb. That was about the only thing that kind of gave me a little hope, but I wasn't out of the woods yet. So, getting back to your question about how did it change my life? Immensely. Started losing weight. I had to change clothes sizes a couple of times, which I never thought would ever happen. I was feeling better. I was having more energy. And, it was all working out. But I still had your talk in the back of my brain. Hey, this could go wrong at any minute, anytime. So the best thing to do is to stay healthy, eat healthy, exercise, and do that on my end of it, and hopefully that will work itself out, which I think it has.
Eloy, did you retire, or are you still teaching?
Yes.
Yeah. No, I was forced into retirement due to this.
So what do you spend your days now doing?
Right now I go to rehab twice a week. I garden. I have my plants outside. I repot right now. I'm repotting. I also walk in the afternoons. I have my little track outside where, I'll get up and I'll do five laps. And it's like I do hopefully what I measured, maybe about a quarter of a mile.
That's
like
awesome.
In the morning and a quarter of a mile in the afternoon or close to it. But I've got to do it. It's one of those, I push myself to walk and exercise. So, yeah, my life has changed.
Well,
It's been positive.
I'll say that whenever you're bored, I think that your story and the way that you tell it is very compelling. And I can assure you that there are thousands of people out there that would probably really, really enjoy, learn, and potentially change their lives by coming into contact with you, be that directly or indirectly. So it seems like you've got a pretty badass routine, but if you're ever bored, I would invite you to find ways in which you can potentially help some of these people that may be where you were a few years ago. And coming from somebody that's lived it, meaning you, that message is much clearer than whatever Ferrer or me can ever say to anybody. And at least on my end, you're always going to have a home here at Hope. I work in Houston. And you're always going to have a home where you can bring your story and help other people through these dark times. So again, not sure what your plan is here now that you've been forced into retirement, but sometimes God has a special plan for us, and it may not necessarily, your teachings don't need to happen in a classroom. There could be a lot more teachings in many other different places in the world that you could do, and you could continue working in many special, magical ways.
Well, I hope this helps, and I would love to, take my message out there, but I wouldn't even know where to start. Maybe this is a start right here. One of the questions I have for you two gentlemen is, are you still doing this procedure like in Austin and Houston, or was I just a lone experiment?
No, you were at the beginning, and it keeps going and keeps growing. And it's kind of our passion. It is what we both think about this a lot. We both practice this a lot. We both try to make it better every single time we do it. We try to get other physicians motivated and excited to offer it. And so we hope it spreads. And we hope to, have the message out there so that patients know that this is an option. And because it's also very, for us, it's very, for me particularly, I know for Miguel too, it's very exciting to be able to make a difference in this field, even if it's a very small difference. So yeah, it keeps going.
Yeah, you're definitely not. You never were an experiment, and you should never think that you were. You were part of the evolution of technique. What I can say is that we've learned a huge amount. If I were to meet you today, you'd probably get a completely different procedure than what you got then.
Yeah.
But that's the nature of where we're at, right? We're learning. We're eternal disciples of science, and we're adapting to hopefully do it to more people and to help more people. I'd say that just alone here, our group in Houston has probably at this point done about 100, 150 of these procedures. I would think globally there's probably 2,000-3,000 procedures done already. You're one of those, and you are very unique for that. But yeah, never an experiment. Just a grain of salt in the evolutionary process of development, and for that we thank you. Thank you for trusting Lucas and his team, and for following through and then becoming the poster child of change. Because I guess that there are second opportunities.
Yeah, we should connect them maybe with Inari, maybe some patient advocacy.
Well, I know I know that our good friends from my Way to My Heart.
Yeah, Way to My Heart also can help.
They're phenomenal, and I know that they would be an incredible platform for you to be able to extend your voice and reverberate the message. I know that we have a lot of connections in the San Antonio area. You're in San Antonio, right?
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, through our friends at PAM Health, we have a significant amount of collaboration. Anyway, man, if you're willing to, I bet you that we could busy you up with a lot of additional work that could be just about helping others, go through this and learn from it. So
I would be glad to help, Dr. Montero. It didn't dawn on me until maybe a year or two afterwards about saving the limb. And, what they were going to put me through to just amputate. So just that concept, hey, to Dr. Ferrer, good job and thank you.
Well, thank you, Eloy, for.
And if there's anything I can do on my end to push, or to talk to, or be a spokesperson for this procedure. I was going to call it an experiment, but I guess I wasn't an experiment. But anyway,
no, it's FDA. It's FDA approved and the whole 9 yards, so it's come a long way.
Yeah.
Eloy, we're going to give you a few minutes back. We appreciate you for taking your time during a weekend to talk to us. Again, I can't wait for this to air and to think of all the people that are going to be, consoled and comforted and potentially reinvigorated by this story. If they are starting or going or finishing this process, I'm sure they will find something. So thank you for your time, and I hope that we see you both in person or virtually in the near future.
Yeah, and Eloy, again, extreme gratitude for your time and for being a great patient and for helping me, develop myself and develop this part of my practice. Your experience was, very motivating for me to kind of do my best and do the best that I could for my patients. So thank you for that.
And hopefully after today, he'll be a nicer person and not such a douchey douche.
Yeah.
All right, Eloy, do you want to say any farewell message here to close the show?
Now the only question, I know I had talked to Dr. Ferrer about possibly doing a specialized MRI of the limb.
We have.
Is that still a possibility, or worth it?
Well,
we have a couple of really interesting investigational grants in the making, and if you're interested in continuing to provide yourself in a way for science to progress, these advanced imaging devices may help us even further understand what's happening inside. And so absolutely, he'll pass the your contact, and we can arrange to get you at some point here into one of our cool little gizmos to see what all we can see of what's happening inside and learning as much as we can from that.
Yeah.
If there's anything I can help with, and you further these adventures on, saving somebody else's limb, or even just teaching, what's out there, what's the possibilities, and I know medicine, so never say never.
Okay.
But good things and bad things happen in medicine. Let's face it.
Eloy, would you do me one last favor before I let you go? Would you send us? Would you have somebody make a video of you in shorts walking, so that we could put it at the tail end of this story?
Yeah.
Just have somebody videotape you walking, because it would be very telling. And maybe if Dr. Ferrer has some of those initial pictures of when you started, where you started and where you're from now, where you're at now, we could do that at the very end to just kind of put the cherry of this show so that people can even envision how bad it was at some point and how good you're doing right now. Like walking your laps on a daily basis.
Yeah, maybe just put your phone and just put it on record and just walk.
Put it against a tree, whatever, and just walk. I mean, we'll post-produce it and it'll be great for people to see, okay?
How about the treadmill at rehab?
Exactly.
Beautiful.
There you go.
Amazing.
Perfect.
That work?
Even better.
Better.
There you go.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because they make me walk there too.
There you go. Just give them your phone and then send us a video. Yeah.
Sounds good. All right.
All right, Eli. God bless you. We'll be in touch and have a beautiful weekend.
Two vascular surgeons walk into a bar and come out with a podcast. We are talking everything vascular and not. Welcome to the Life of Flow podcast.